Let's talk a little bit about fundraising in the 2020 campaign. Incredible numbers from Bernie Sanders, the independent Vermont senator who is doing increasingly well in recent polls. Bernie Sanders raised $25 million in January from 648,000 different people. This is the most any candidate has raised in any quarter in the election cycle, period. And it may even be, I was not able to confirm this 100%, 25 million in a month may be the most raised by any candidate in any election cycle ever in a single month. But fact check me on that. I'm not totally sure about that. A teacher was the most common occupation of people donating to Bernie Sanders. The most common employers of the donors are Amazon, Starbucks, Walmart, and the U.S. Postal Service, as well as Target. Now, I don't know how much that really tells us, in the sense that these are just really large employers. And if you have a ton of employees and there's a candidate that is resonating with people, it sort of makes sense that there would be a high number of individual donors from that company. Of the 648,000 donors, 219,000 were new donors. These are people that had not previously donated to Bernie Sanders. Average donation is $18.72. Almost all of Bernie's donors, reportedly just a hair under 100%, have not yet donated the maximum, meaning that depending on how the primary process continues to play out, there could be significantly more money coming from these donors. So a few things that I think are important to talk about. I find that the system we have is disgusting, right? You might be saying, David, why are you talking about raising money like it's a good thing if you talk about the system we have is terrible and we need money out of politics? Well, until we change the game, you've got to play the game. That's very simple. And I think like 98% of my audience understands that. It would be far better that elections did not depend on fundraising in this way, or being able to, as Michael Bloomberg is doing, pouring ungodly amounts of his own money into this thing. It would be great if we had public financing of election. It would be great if we made all of the reforms to money in politics that we've been talking about for a decade on the program. But right now, the candidate who raises more money tends to win. And it is a good sign for the eventual viability of a Bernie nomination, if he gets it, that he is able to raise these amounts of money. So that's number one. Number two, these amounts of money. Number two, what is going to be Bernie's strategy as we get closer and into the Super Tuesday contention? I've talked about how Michael Bloomberg has made his strategy very clear. He's pouring money into Super Tuesday states. Last week, I told you I was visited by a Bloomberg campaign staffer who came to my house and made it very clear that they are going very, very hard in the Super Tuesday states. When we look at that strategy, it has been working well for Michael Bloomberg. He actually has hit 13 and 14% in some national polls and is starting to climb in some of those Super Tuesday states. So given the small number of delegates in most of these first four primaries, when you look at South Carolina being the one with the most delegates, but that's the one where Bernie is actually doing the worst in, I would not be shocked if Bernie Sanders very, very quickly transitions, particularly after the New Hampshire primary on Tuesday, where he's doing really well. I wouldn't be shocked if Bernie transitions into a similar strategy to Bloomberg, which is pour the money into Super Tuesday states, both in terms of advertising on television, radio, online, YouTube, et cetera, as well as campaigning in those states. Recall that if we look back at 2016, I want to talk about the numbers a little bit more. In 2016, when it was essentially a two-candidate race, Bernie versus Hillary, Bernie raised 21 million in January. This time, with multiple candidates that are at least potentially viable, Bernie raised more, $25 million. Now, you have to account for there's a larger population now and inflation and so on. But that is an incredibly good sign for Bernie Sanders. Last thing, one of the elements that is often glossed over, and it doesn't get as much attention, even though it is very interesting, is the number of people that are making multiple donations to Bernie Sanders. He has a combination of new donors. About a third of his January donors were new donors who hadn't donated before. But 400,000 people that donated to Bernie in January had already donated to Bernie before. That is very important, particularly when you look at Michael Bloomberg, who has this effectively bottomless pit of money, but not nearly the support that Bernie Sanders has. It is really important that there are people engaged enough that they are donating multiple times. It's terrible that this is the system. it's a good thing that Bernie Sanders seems to be doing so well. Let's take a quick break. Much more to discuss after this.